I request you to come up to the front and put questions. Please, this is not a debate, and you cannot come up and either debate or give another lecture. I will then be compelled to rule you out of order, and with respect to you, I would like to say it matters not who you are. If we can't control the thing from the front, then there's no sense in having the proceedings of this evening. So if I stop you, it is the way I see it, in the interest of this evening. I now have great pleasure in calling upon our first speaker for the evening, Mr. Paul Findley.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. I began this evening hoping to shake hands and meet personally every one of you, but I didn't get very far. What a wonderful audience here tonight. Now, would those who can hear my words raise your hand so I can see them? Would you raise your hands if you can hear me? I can be heard, I guess, up in the upper balcony too. Is that true? Raise your hand if you can hear me up there. Good. That's reassuring. And while you have your hands up, I'll shake hands with each of you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Findley and I have had a glorious time in South Africa. We've encountered something a little bit unusual, though. Several people have said that we talk funny. Now, here we thought it was South Africans who talk funny. Now, if my talk is so funny that you can't understand it, Dr. Deedat has promised that he will give you an English language translation of my remarks when I finish. Now, you met Mrs. Findley just a moment ago. She's a very important person, very important to me personally, but also important to you tonight. She's my timekeeper. She makes sure that I don't talk too long. If I begin to talk too long, she raises her left arm up to listen to the watch to make sure it's still running. And then if that doesn't work, she stands up and walks out of the room. So you can see she fills a very important function tonight as my timekeeper. Lucille, would you stand up and say hello to the gathering? Thank you. Now I also want to thank the Cape Town Argus and the Cape Times. I've been reading about myself in both the Argus and the Times. Maybe some of you saw the same advertising that I saw. They described me in the advertising as Arafat's. Whoops, things are changing here. This is an unrehearsed part of the program. Now, is that better? Can you hear me better now? How about up in the balcony? Now, does that come through better? It sounds to me much better. But I promise you I won't start over. I want to thank the Cape Town Argus and the Cape Times for advertising my presence here in Cape Town. Otherwise, the public would never have known that Mrs. Findley and I are here. Now, in the advertising, they described me and quoted me as saying that I'm Yasser Arafat's only friend in the U.S. Congress. Well, I want you to know that I regard Chairman Yasser Arafat, who is now President Yasser Arafat of the New Palestine as one of the great political figures of this generation. And I am very proud to be known as his friend. And I thank the Times and the Argus for advertising that fact. They also say that I am a former paid employee of the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee. That's an organization based in Washington, D.C. Well, for a time I was paid by this organization, and I want you to know that anytime I have the opportunity to work for an organization that works against racial discrimination, I will take great pride in having that job. And then in big letters they say ex-Congressman Paul Findley defeated in 1982. Well, I was not returned to Congress, but by my measure I was not defeated, I was victorious, because I am now given this great audience in South Africa that never would have been mine had I been returned to the Congress. So I thank the newspapers for this publicity. Now, there is some talk about this being a boxing match between myself and Ahmed Deedat. And I checked around the stores to see if I could find the right boxing gloves to wear tonight. I couldn't find any small enough for me or any large enough for Ahmed Deedat. So we aren't going to box with each other. We're going to talk about the same subject. In fact, I am so grateful tonight that I am on the same side with Ahmed Deedat. I never want to be on the other side of the fence. I never want to be in the opposition to Ahmed Deedat. As I ponder the provocative topic of this symposium, is Israel set up for destruction, my thoughts keep returning to the appearance of an Israeli citizen recently in a small dining room on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Get the picture. His name is Israel Sheikh. He is the speaker of the occasion. He is a professor of chemistry at Hebrew University. He is a Jew. In his audience are people who work for U.S. congressmen, a few former members of the Congress, former career diplomats of the United States, and others interested in the peace movement for the Middle East, perhaps 75 people in all. The speaker is ordinary in appearance, about my height. He has gray, wispy hair. He wears thick glasses. He speaks softly. The noise from the adjoining dining rooms make it very difficult for any of us to hear what he has to say, but his words are well worth straining to hear. He is remarkable. He knows adversity and fear as do few people on earth. He is a survivor of one of Adolf Hitler's death camps for Jews, a survivor of the Holocaust, himself a Jew, and in his words, a law-abiding citizen of Israel. No one will accuse him of being anti-Semitic. And as a survivor of the Holocaust, no one will accuse him of being indifferent to the suffering of Jews under Nazi Germany. He makes his living teaching chemistry, but his calling is decency in human relations. He warns against the destructive course of Israeli policy. He cries out with concern for the plight of the Palestinians, and he expresses anguish for the future of the land that he loves and wants to keep loving, the state of Israel. In another time, he would be a prophet, and the Christian Bible that Ahmed Deedat knows so well might well contain a new book, a book of Sheikh. He's a modern-day prophet calling upon his own people in Israel to repent their sins against their neighbors, trying to awaken at the same time the people of the United States to the grim and awful truth about what is really happening inside the state of Israel. He expresses his warning and his anguish in Washington, D.C., which is just exactly the right place, because the U.S. government is the lifeline for the state of Israel. Therefore, the people of America should know the reality of the Middle East, because they must accept the blame, much of the blame, for what is happening in Israel, because they are indeed the lifeline without which Israel could not survive. Prophet Sheikh's usual weapon is the written word. Every month, he seeks out in the Hebrew language press of Israel facts about happenings within that state. He translates these into English and sends copies of the translation to a number of periodicals in the United States. This report is critically important because it reviews Israel's Hebrew press, not Israel's English press. It is the Hebrew press that describes reality in Israel. For one thing, the Hebrew press reports accurately what Prime Minister Shamir has to say. It tells the truth about Shamir's thoughts. Israel Sheikh says, and I quote him, "Shamir lies only in English." End of quote. That is to say, if you really want to know what is on Shamir's mind, listen.
I will then be compelled to rule you out of order, and with respect to you, I would like to say, it matters not who you are. If we can't control the thing from the front, then there's no sense in having the proceedings of this evening. So if I stop you, it is the way I see it.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. I began this evening hoping to shake hands and meet personally every one of you, but I didn't get very far. What a wonderful...
In the interest of this evening, I now have great pleasure in calling upon our first speaker for the evening, Mr. Paul Findley. I request you to come up to the front and put questions. Please, this is not a debate, and you cannot come up and either debate or give another lecture.
Full audience here tonight. Now, would those who can hear my words raise your hand so I can see them? Would you raise your hands if you can hear me? I can be heard, I guess, up in the upper balcony too. Is that true?